Welcome back. Today we're going to step up our programs from following simple steps to actually making decisions. This is called flow control, and it's going to change everything about how your code works. So last lesson, we worked with comparison operators, so let's just see them in action. I'm going to go ahead and paste in some code. Okay, so here's some code. We have defined variables and assigned them values of 2500, true, and 180. And you see that we have some print statements that evaluate conditions. Now, these conditions evaluate to true or false. That's powerful, but right now we can't actually do anything. Let me go ahead and just run this so we could see, yeah, everything is evaluating to true. And as I said, we can't really do anything with these answers. And so we need a way to tell Python, when this is true, do this. When this is false, do something else. And this is where the if statement comes in. An if statement is the foundation of decision making in Python. Think of it like a gateway. Python checks a condition, and if that condition is true, it opens the gate and lets some code run. But if the condition is false, Python keeps that gate closed and it skips that code. So I'm going to show you the exact structure of an if statement. Go ahead and comment this code out. I'm actually just going to delete this because we really don't need this. All right. Okay, so I'm going to wrap this in a multi-line comment and show you the example structure of an if statement. This word if, it has a special meaning in Python. It's called a keyword. And when Python sees if, it knows you're about to give it a condition to check. So after you write if, you write your condition, and this condition is any expression that results in true or false, and then comes this colon. This tells Python, all right, get ready. Here comes a code that should run when this condition is true. So let's make this real with actual Python concepts. Okay, so let me write a comment. All right, understanding score, I'm going to create this variable and assign it to 75. And then I'm going to create this if statement. If understanding score is greater than or equal to 70, colon, I'm going to print, you understand the basics of Python. All right, so let's run this code. And you see that it actually printed, you understand the basics of Python. So I'm going to go through this code and explain to you everything that's happening. We've declared this variable, understanding score, and assigned it to 75. And then Python sees this if statement. It's like, okay, here's a keyword if, and it knows that a decision is coming. So it evaluates this condition, understanding score is greater than or equal to 70, and it gets true because, of course, 75 is greater than 70. And then it runs this print statement because the condition was true. But what if understanding score was 65? Let's try that out. Nothing is printed. And let me once again just walk through line by line what's happening. Okay, of course, 65 is assigned to understanding score. Then Python sees this if keyword, and it's evaluating this condition, understanding score is greater than or equal to 70. However, it's going to get false because 65 is not greater than or equal to 70. And because it's false, it's skipping the print statement entirely. And it would essentially continue with any other code that is after this if statement. So I'm going to show you some more examples so you can just really understand what is happening with this if statement, because honestly, this is everywhere. From now on, all your programs will have tons of if statements. So let's see this with multiple conditions. So I've created some variables and assigned them some values. And now here's a bunch of if statements. Let me bring this down a little bit. Just make this a little bit smaller, the text, so we can see everything. All right, so each if statement here, It's independent. And Python evaluates each condition separately and then decides for each one whether to run its code or skip it. So let me go ahead and run the program, Control R. And okay, we see that if Python score is greater than or equal to 80, which 85 is, it's printing great understanding of Python. And then it continues. Python is continuing with the program. You know, we're reading like a book going all the way down. And then next, if exercise completed is greater than 5, we're going to print, hey, if that's true, good practice with exercises. And you see that it did print this. And then this is also evaluating to true because attended lecture equals true. So if attended lecture, which is true, this is also printing. All right. So each of these statements, as I said, are independent if statements. So far, we've used if statements to run code when something is true. Now let's try something else. And I want you to observe this behavior. I'm just going to copy this code down. You don't need to really worry about writing this code out necessarily. If you want to, go ahead and pause the lecture and, you know, my apologies for just pasting code because I know that's annoying when you're watching tutorials, but my typing is just, you know, it's rough out here with me typing and all the typos and trying to record at the same time. The microphone's in the way, like all of that stuff. So just bear with me and going to paste this code. All right. And so let me just split this up. Okay. So what we can see is that I've declared a variable score and assigned it to 85. And then if score is greater than or equal to 70, if that condition is true, we're going to print you passed. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. And we can see that it printed you pass, but you can also see that it printed test complete. Okay, so notice this last line. It is not indented. So it's not a part of this if statement. Python is going to run it regardless of the score. And so this is very important because any line that's not indented is independent of the if statement. So if the condition was false, let me go ahead and just update this. All right. If the condition was false, all we're going to see is test complete. All right. So notice that this last line, it's not indented. So it's not a part of this if statement. So Python will run it regardless of the score. And this is important because any line that's not indented is independent of the if statement. So what about when the condition is false? Because right now, when the score is less than 70, our program just skips the indented line and moves on. So sometimes that's what we want, but oftentimes what we want to do is something specific when the condition is false. So for example, think about giving feedback on a Python exercise. When you get it right, you should see good job. But when you get it wrong, you should see try again. So we need a way to handle both situations. And this is where else comes in, okay? Else is another keyword. So let me show you an example how that works. Okay, so let me just put if else statement. All right, so now we're going to handle both situations. So I'm going to go ahead and reassign score to 65. And then if score is greater than or equal to 70, colon, we're going to print good job. And then here's that special keyword, else. Else, that I spelled wrong. Else, there it is. Else, print, try again. All right, so I'm going to run this program. And we see that it says try again. All right, so let's talk about this. The else statement tells Python, if the condition was false, do this instead. So let's break this down exactly how Python runs this code. First thing it does is it sees that score is 65, right? And then it goes, if score is greater than or equal to 70, all right, well, 65 is not, so it's false. This evaluates to false. So it skips everything under this code block inside of this if statement. And then it sees else and knows, well, this is what we do when this condition is false. And so it runs the code indented under this else. And then, hey, if there is more code below, it just continue with the rest of the program. So the else statement has specific rules. One, it must be aligned with its matching if. What do I mean by aligned? You see how it's not indented. It's literally aligned with the if statement. This if statement, this else statement, they're together. So it must be aligned with its matching if. It also needs to end with a colon. And it cannot have its own condition. You see, there's no condition right here. Okay, and then the last rule is it must have its code indented. So here's what happens if we don't properly indent, okay? I'm gonna go ahead and paste some code so you can just see. You can already see that our IDE, PyCharm, is yelling at us, okay? Like, oh my gosh, there's an if statement and this print, oh, this is not intended. And then it's like, oh my gosh, there's an else, and this isn't indented either. So if I actually try to run this code, I get a freaking error. All right, and error not indented, and it gives us this indentation error. Expected an indented block after if statement on line 40. So we go to line 40. This is the if statement, and it's like, hey, we expected an indented block here. This should be indented. So if I were to hit tab and run this again, let's look at the different error. And so now you can see actually the error is a little bit different. It's showing this try again print, and it also tells us, hey, indentation error. Did I pronounce that right earlier? I might have messed that one up. Expected an indented. Oh, whoa! Guys, this is what's happening. Expected an intended, yeah, wow. Expected indented, oh my gosh. This is troublesome. I'm not even going to try to read it, but you see it. Expected and blank block after else statement on line 42. Whew. Okay, so after I just went through all of that, let me just summarize what happened. It's very important that you make sure to indent properly inside of the if statements. So the moral of the story is you got to make sure to indent correctly. So let me give you an example of some code that is actually indenting correctly. I'm going to go ahead and just comment this out and comment everything out just to clean it up a little bit, our terminal when we're running code. And just going to go ahead and print that out for you. Okay. So we see that we have score again at 65, and we have this if statement. Now we know that this score greater than or equal to 70 is going to evaluate to false because score is 65. So it's going to skip this and it's going to jump to this else statement, and it should print try again. Here's a hint. And then it's done with the code. All right, it's done. And now it's moving on with the rest of our program. I'm going to actually go ahead and put a little space there just to clean it up, just because that looks a little cleaner. But let's run the code. All right, so let's check it out. We have our try again, which is in our else block, and then we have our here's a hint to help. And then of course this is done. The if statement, the if and else block, it's done. And now we're going to continue on with our program and print. All righty, so let's move forward. Now that we understand if and else, let's talk about situations where we need more than two choices. So when you're, let's think of an example here. When you're creating content, you often need to make decisions based on different view counts. So let me go ahead and write a little comment. If, elif, else statement. Okay, so views equals 6,500. If views is greater than or equal to 10,000, we're going to print this is viral. Then I'm going to say if views again greater than or equal to 5,000, video is trending. And then one more again. Views greater than or equal to 1,000, print is gaining traction. Okay, so I'm going to run this code. And I want you guys just to notice what's going to happen here. Maybe you can think about it a little bit. So we see that views is 6,500, and this is going to work for both of these conditions. So let's see what happens. All right, so we see, let me get rid of this. Comment this out. Okay, let me run it again just so we can have a clean terminal. Okay, so we see that it has printed video is trending and video is gaining traction. That's not what we want. We want the video to just be in one category, okay? We want Python to first check if it's viral, and if it's not viral, then we check if it's trending, and if it's not trending, then check if it's gaining traction. And if none of those are happening, if none of that is true, then just keep promoting. Let's imagine we had some additional code below saying keep promoting. And this is where we have this new keyword in this whole flow control system. It is called elif, which means else if. Okay, so else if, it lets us check multiple conditions in order. So here's the syntax. Okay, I'm going to comment this out. All right, so I just pasted that code. Okay, so here is the syntax. We have this new elif, and let's break down exactly how Python is processing this code. Okay, so it sees that we have a variable view count that is 6,500. And so then it next goes to this if statement. And then it goes to this if statement. Is view count greater than or equal to 10,000? And since 6,500 is not, it's going to skip this 10,000. You know, this is false, so it skips this block. So then it moves to this new keyword that we just learned, else if, elif. And it's checking, hey, is the view count greater than or equal to 5,000? And 6,500 is. So this is true. And what this is going to do, it's going to run this print. And then after running this block, Python skips the remaining else if statements and the else blocks. All right, so let's run this code. The rest of the conditions, they're not even checked. So the order is crucial. Python checks these conditions from top to bottom and runs the first block where the condition is true. So even if multiple conditions could be true, only the first one runs. So I'm going to give you guys a much more complex example. This is a lot of code. Once again, you can pause the video to copy down the code, but I'm just going to paste it in here so you guys can see it. All right, here's this long block of code. Okay, so let's talk about how this works. Okay, so we have assigned our variables, okay, and then the code goes to the if statement, and the first check that it does, it's going to check if the video has 10,000 plus views and 2,000 plus likes. If true, it's going to print viral success and push the video to the For You page. If it's false, it's going to move to this next condition. Okay, and so then now this is going to check if the video has 5,000 plus views, and we're going to go inside of here. It's going to check does it have 1,000 plus likes or 100 plus shares? And so if true, this evaluates to true, it's going to print strong performance and that it's expanding the video's reach. Okay. And then we're going to go to our third else if condition. So it's going to check if the video has 1,000 plus views or it has 200 plus comments. And if it does, it's going to print good engagement. Keep using the current promotion. And then last but not least, we have this little fallback, our little else statement. Because remember from before when it was super easy when we just had the if condition and the else condition. If the if condition was false, then it just went to this, well, okay, if this is false, then we're going to do this. And so here is our fallback condition, else statement. If none of the above conditions are true, then we're going to write building momentum and adjust the content strategy. So I'm going to go ahead and fire this off. And so we see that we have strong performance, expanding reach to similar audience. So the first condition that evaluated to true is this second else if condition. So views is greater than or equal to 5,000. Yes, it's 7,500. Okay, now we go inside of this. And so our likes greater than or equal to 1,000. Yes, 1,200. Or shares greater than or equal to 100. Shares is 150. So these both evaluate to true. And remember, if there's an or statement, it could be true or false and still evaluate to true. But in this case, they're both true. So of course, it's going to evaluate to true. And then we have this and operator. And the and says both conditions need to evaluate to true for this to equal true. So yes, this is true. And this whole condition is also true. And that's the reason why it goes inside of this code block and it prints these statements. The key takeaway here, programs evaluate conditions in order, and it stops as soon as it finds a true condition. And only one block of code runs, even if multiple conditions are true. All right, so let's clean this up a little bit. I'm just going to comment all of this out. All right, so let's talk about more ways that we can make decisions. Now, remember, an if statement block of code only runs when its condition is true. And so this is super important to understand. Python evaluates the condition, and if it gets true, it runs that block. But if it gets false, it skips that block. So let's look at different ways to work with true and false. Do you remember the not equal operator? All right, let me just go ahead and remind you. Not equal operator was the exclamation point and the equal sign. So sometimes we want to check if something is different. And the way that we can do that is we use that not equal operator. Let me type in an example. All right. So in this example, we've assigned Python tutorial to lesson type. And then we have this if condition, this if statement that is going to check if the lesson type does not equal career prep, then we want to run this block of code. So right here, we want to check if something is not true. All right, so go ahead. I'm going to run this. All right, and so we can see that because lesson type does not equal career prep, because lesson type equals Python tutorial, this is actually true. And so it's going to run this block of code. So let's talk about nested decisions. All right, I'm going to write a little comment. We're able to actually put other if statements inside of if statements, and that's called a nested if statement. So I'm going to paste some code for you. It's a lot of code again, so go ahead and pause the video if you want to copy this. All right, so let's look at how each decision here is going to lead to another decision. So we see that we have assigned some variables, and when we go inside of here, we start with our if statement and we check this condition, views greater than 10,000. Okay, we look up, yes it is. So then we're going to print video has good views. And remember, under an if statement, it's a block of code. So all this code under this if statement is actually running. And so that's why then we go to our next statement. And it says, well, if likes is greater than 500, well, yes, it is. So we go ahead and print that again. And you know what? Inside of this if statement, inside of this block of code, because remember the colon is the one that determines where the block starts, we also have another if statement. Okay, comments greater than 50. Well, yes, it is. So we go inside of here and we print, cool, triple threat. But let's say comments wasn't greater than 50, we would go to this else statement, which would say, well, good engagement. Now, as you can see, look at the alignment of these else statements, how I was talking about earlier, how it matters how things are indented. This else is belongs to this if statement. We can see the same indentation. We see we have this else statement right here that is belonging to this if statement. And then our top level if statement does not have any else statement. So if this condition was false, then it would literally just go outside and just start running, continue with the program. So if we had much more code after there. Okay, so that was kind of like a lot to take in, but it really is the same concepts. You know, we started up here, and then this was true, so then we had to run its block of code, and inside of its block of code, it had another condition statement that evaluated to true, so then we had to run its block of code, which once again, there's another if statement that also evaluated to true, and so then we just went to the print statement, and that was it. And then that was the end of the program, because now this condition evaluated to true and it's done. There's no more code to run. So let me go ahead and run this. Okay, so we can see this video has good views, and then this video has great likes and triple threat. Cool. And now this is all done. And so we continued on with the program. We were outside of the if statement, and we continued on. All right, so key takeaway. Nested decisions allow you to handle more complex scenarios. And so you just break them up into smaller steps. And each decision is leading to another decision, creating a hierarchy of decisions. Final thoughts. All right, so what we learned today is the foundation of how all programs make decisions. Whether it's TikTok deciding what video to show you next, or some game determining if you won or lost, it all comes down to conditional logic. So this is what we covered. We covered using if statements to make basic decisions. We covered how to use else to handle alternative cases. Then we used the elif, which is else if, for multiple options. And then we also learned about checking if things are different with the not equal to operator. And last but not least, nesting decisions inside of other decisions. So everybody keep exploring, keep coding, and just remember that every program you use is just making decisions based on exactly what we learned today. Make sure to check the lessons course hub to see any additional material, if there's any quizzes or projects or any additional resources.